What teams have the 15 biggest fantasy football questions when it comes to their quarterback plans in 2023? It's time to break it down right here and right now as we begin another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinny Iron. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about fantasy football and the NFL for sportingnews.com. We recently looked at where the Raiders might go at quarterback. We've also had an article on the Jets quarterback plans. Well, we're going to break down those teams as well as 13 other teams with unsettled quarterback situations for 2023. These are teams that have a little bit of a question or a major question, not knowing at all who's going to be their starting quarterback here. That, of course, is worrisome for fantasy football because we want things settled there. We will get some answers as we get into the new year, starting in March, as well as some teams filling out their starting quarterback position in the first round or beyond of the 2023 NFL draft. So a lot of questions, and we'll get their answers, but we wanted to explore those to see what's going on with those teams and what they might be thinking here. We will break down what we expect from those new coaching situations. Once we get everyone kind of locked up with their offensive coordinators and their plans there, we're getting close. So excited to find out about what these teams in new directions can do. So offseason, we'll break it down. Of course, combine coverage coming up as well on the show to give you insight on the combine and the players there and players to watch and things that may go down with the veterans and deals here ahead of free agency. So a lot of stuff to talk about in the offseason here on Locked On Fantasy Football. We did look at Super Bowl futures odds on FanDuel Sportsbook for Super Bowl 58 2024. Speaking of FanDuel, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today. Get started. Check it out. We did break down those futures latest odds there on FanDuel on our previous show. So let's go forward here. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We're free and available to you on all platforms. So we're going to start at number one here. The biggest question mark now after the release of Derek Carr, the Las Vegas Raiders with the biggest quarterback question now. They have Jared Stidham on their roster still. He started the last two games for Josh McDaniels as they were clearly trying to save Derek Carr for a trade. Well, it didn't materialize for multiple reasons with the Saints and trying to get the reunion with his first Raiders coach, Dennis Allen. So he's out. The Raiders are looking for a quarterback. We know who they're lined up for, right? Devontae Adams is there. They're going to be in the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes. It's about trying to get a deal in place that can go after Rodgers. So this is uncertain here what they're going to do. They got Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett. These are a couple of free agents that have also been in the system. I had also conjectured about Mac Jones. Remember, Mac Jones did not like the coaching staff there, the offensive guys that were left. I know they hired Bill O'Brien, but between Matt Patricia and Bill Belichick and Joe Judge, it was pretty ugly there in New England. And we know Mac Jones made the Pro Bowl with a very efficient season with McDaniels as his coordinator as a rookie. So I wouldn't sleep on the Patriots, maybe moving on. So you got Jones and Garoppolo and Brissett, all familiar with McDaniel's systems that are out there in different ways to acquire. And Kirk Cousins is another one I looked at, and the Vikings are not on this list because I don't think they'll move Cousins. But if the Raiders made an aggressive move to go get Cousins and got a reasonable deal, that's something the Vikings would have to explore. I think that's a long shot as well as trading for Mac Jones. But right now, I would say if they don't go after and acquire Rodgers, you're looking at Garoppolo, Brissett, and probably a rookie situation as the Raiders pick number 7 overall in the draft. So they'll be in a good position to get at least Will Levis out of Kentucky, a pocket passer who could replace Derek Carr there in the first round. So number one team, biggest quarterback question, definitely the Raiders now after Carr waived released after 9 seasons as the starter. Hard to believe he's been there that long, but as a case, the Raiders, however, want a change, and we'll see how that plays out. But great weapons, Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, to be connected with the Raiders. So love that for that situation. Well, the team that's going to probably compete with the Raiders for Aaron Rodgers most is the New York Jets. They've been also tied to him the most because they did hire Nathaniel Hackett as their new offensive coordinator, replacing Mike LaFleur, Matt LaFleur's brother. So a lot of weird Packers offensive connections here. But Hackett being hired, one of Rodgers' old right-hand men there with the Packers, other than looking at LaFleur and that offense, Hackett was a big influence there. So everyone speculates the hiring of Hackett, but the Jets might actually pull off what the Broncos weren't able to do. They wanted Rodgers. They ended up with Russell Wilson last year. Wilson and Hackett didn't make it, but we know Hackett and Rodgers have a good history. So look at the Jets. You got Breece Hall. Hopefully he's fully healthy at some point here soon. You got Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, some young weapons there, Corey Davis, the tight ends. So it's a very promising situation here for the Jets with whoever lands their quarterback that's competent. Mike White's a free agent. Joe Flacco is not signed for 2023 either, and he also could retire here. And you also have that ugly situation with Zach Wilson. I don't think they're going to return to him. So, again, it's going to be a Rodgers battle between the Jets and Raiders, I think, going forward. I think one team out of the mix for Rodgers, but now desperately needs a starting quarterback after Tom Brady officially retires. It's the Buccaneers. So they're left with Kyle Trask on the top of their depth chart. Blaine Gabbert is a free agent. So I don't know if they're just going to roll with Trask. They're picking late in the first round, 18th there. So you can look at the potential of drafting another quarterback. Anthony Richardson would be in that range, another Gators quarterback. Would they collect a couple Florida guys in there and have a competition? We're going to watch that. Do they go for Brissett or Garoppolo? They're replacing Brady, which they've done before. Remember, in the Deflategate suspension year, those were their starting quarterbacks instead of Brady here. So when all that was going down, so will they go that way? They are still looking for their offensive direction here. Todd Monken ended up with the Ravens as their offensive coordinator, so he was a favorite there with the Buccaneers to return. Tampa coming from the University of Georgia, so a lot of things in flux with the Buccaneers, moving on from Byron Leftwich, moving on from Brady, trying to figure things out, but it doesn't feel great for Mike Evans and Chris Godwin to keep up their high level production here. Really a hit for this entire offense when you look going forward. All right, let's go to the next team looking for a quarterback, the Colts. They got Nick Foles, Matt Ryan, and Sam Ehlinger. That's not going to be one of their solutions here. They can also go after quarterback in the draft. They're picking early enough. They're in the top 4, whether you could look at C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young, whoever does not get taken. They're early at number 1 or number 2 overall. So the Colts should definitely think about that direction. Shane Steichen, the Eagles offensive coordinator, fresh from the Super Bowl, is their new head coach, offensive-minded coach, a good quarterbacks coach. If you go back to his days, he was with the Chargers early with Justin Herbert. He's a good young quarterback developer, so that makes a lot of sense to go to a Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud here in Indianapolis. So that's where I think they'll end up and start that rookie right away, and they won't have any issues about it. Chris Ballard is a smart GM. He has a history with the Chiefs, so they're going to look to load up, I think, at other positions if they can land one of those young quarterbacks and try to make a run at it here. They do have some good skill players. Their offensive line can rebound here, but you have Michael Pittman Jr., Alec Pierce, Paris Campbell's a free agent, but Jonathan Taylor out of the backfield. You know, they're pretty strong there. Some good young, promising tight ends as well. So not the worst situation for a rookie to inherit, but the Colts, I think that's their best course of action to get out of this little recycling quarterbacks mode that they've been in since Andrew Luck retired. Some degree of success with Philip Rivers. Did not work out with Carson Wentz, and it really blew up in their faces with Matt Ryan. All right, we go to the Texans. Last team we'll talk about in this segment. The Texans are pretty unknown. We know Davis Mills is not going to be their starting quarterback. They're sitting on 2 first-round picks, including number 2 overall behind the Bears. They could have this Stroud or Young decision as well if someone even trades up with the Bears to get that quarterback of choice. So again, going forward, they got D'Amico Ryans. They're installing the 49er style system. So a lot of plucking from Shanahan there as Ryan makes a transition from San Francisco back to Houston, where he was a player. So looking at a lot of options for the Texans, but again, the draft would seem to make the most sense for them going forward because I don't think they want to go for a bridge again. And this is a team that wants to push forward and really rebuild their roster a little bit faster than it has been. All right, so there you have it. There's a look at your top five neediest teams at quarterback here in terms of trying to find a solution for 2023. We'll get into the other 10. So can't believe almost half the league trying to figure out what to do with quarterback. Coaching carousel is one thing, but quarterback carousel is starting to kick in with the league here as well. So very interesting times in the NFL as everyone's looking for the elite passer. If they don't have them, they're getting into the mix and trying to find it. Looking for a delicious treat, but don't want all the fat and calories, and you got to try Built Bar. We've got through the holidays, and we had January and February, and I know my goal is to eat a little healthier this year. It is Mardi Gras time and Lent, so time to give up something, and maybe it's giving up all the unhealthy food that's not making you feel as good as you can be. You want to eat healthy, but you don't want to compromise taste. And man, I've got just something for you. You got to try Build Healthy. It's actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious. These bars, you won't think they're good for you. Perfect for your new year. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, they're all covered in 100% real chocolate. They come in unbelievable flavors. Churro, that's delicious. Peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, so many good flavors and interesting flavors as well. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar, and they also have amazing macros. They're healthy for you, only 130 calories and only 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. Now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been telling you to go to built.com to get your Built Bars. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. So that's great news. You can walk in and get them at either spot. You can get the 4-bar boxes at your Walmart. Cookies and cream, double chocolate, coconut puffs. Those are some of the flavors. But if you're close to Sam's Club, you can get a 13-bar box inside with brownie batter, churro as some of the flavors. So great stuff all around from Built, the healthiest, most delicious protein bar out there. And you can thank me later that I've given you a new way to get your Built Bars here in 2023. All right, it is time to continue the show. Look at the neediest quarterback teams here in 2023. Let's go to our number 6 team. It's the Carolina Panthers. This is telling me something. If they're number 6, oh, man, there's just a lot of quarterback questions. We want somebody to get the best out of DJ Moore. Sam Darnold's a free agent. They're not going to keep PJ Walker as a starting quarterback. They already moved on from Baker Mayfield. He's also a free agent now with the Rams. I think the Panthers also target the draft here. They've been rumored to maybe go after Carr as their bridge on the cheap here, so we'll see if that plays out. But Carr and DJ Moore wouldn't be too bad, but they need some help. Robbie Anderson probably dogs the house a little bit. I think you'll see more of Terrence Marshall Jr. here going forward with the new coaching staff. So interesting there with Frank Reich and trying to get the ship there on the way. Do they go after one of these Colts quarterbacks, or do they go after Carson Wentz? If the Commanders, as expected, want to dump this situation. So when we look at that, the Panthers have all kinds of possibilities from Carr to Wentz to Ryan to the draft to any of these guys to bringing back Darnold. So there's a lot of uncertainty over that situation with the Panthers. Not a surprise, and we'll see how that plays out going forward. All right. You also have the New Orleans Saints. They weren't interested enough in Derek Carr at his price point to make a trade there, and it didn't quite work out. So the Saints need to look if they want to re-sign Andy Dalton. He's a free agent. Jameis Winston, do they want to go back to him? I doubt it. Taysom Hill looks like he's already transitioned more to that hybrid tight end role and not trying to be a legitimate quarterback for them. So what do? I mean, they don't have the first round pick early, but they do have now a first round pick in general because they have that Sean Payton trade with the Broncos that helped them acquire pick late there. It was actually the 49ers pick, but they have it now at number 30. So that gives them some flexibility if Anthony Richardson's on the board, or if they want to dive into like a Tanner McKee and reach a little bit, or a Hendon Hooker later in the draft, they could look there as well with the Saints. So definitely uncertain situation. So those are the teams, those 7 teams: Raiders, Jets, Buccaneers, Colts, Texans, Panthers, Saints. I have no idea who's going to be their starting quarterback. Look, there's not even a hint here that we're going to figure it out yet, especially with a lot of these teams having new coaches. The Panthers with Reich, the Colts with Steichen, 2 offensive-minded coaches there. You got Ryans in Houston, new OC in Tampa, new OC of the Jets. all these changes here happening. So a lot of uncertainty at quarterback, and we want a little bit of stability there at the most important position. Now let's talk about three teams that have a solution if they want to take it. It's the Titans, Ryan Tannehill versus Malik Willis. So they turned the page of Malik Willis. They move Ryan Tannehill. He's been rumored as a backup contingency plan for the Jets in a weird way. Go figure. There with Tannehill. So do the Jets go in that direction? The Raiders look at Tannehill for McDaniels. There's all kinds of things you can look at. Willis would be waiting in the wings. So we just don't know between Tannehill and Willis exactly where they're going to go. I don't think there's going to be a third option here for the Titans. The Falcons, we're going to tentatively pencil in Desmond Ridder as a starting quarterback. Clearly, it's not going to be Marcus Mariota here after the weird stuff that happened at the end of the year where they just rely on him and all that stuff. So it's Desmond Ridder as the leader right now to potentially be the starting quarterback. Lamar Jackson, could they aggressively make a trade if things fall apart with him and the Ravens here? So when we look at the Falcons, they're definitely in the mix for a potential quarterback, maybe someone to compete with Ridder. They could also be in the mix for Brissett. It would seem to make sense, and maybe bridge Brissett here to Ridder, or just go with Ridder. So that's an uncertain quarterback situation there. Now, the Packers are not really uncertain should they move Aaron Rodgers. We know they're going to turn the page for their first rounder, Jordan Love, and he'll be their starting quarterback. Here, if they move Rodgers, they're on this list because we're not quite sure when and if they will trade Rodgers quite yet. We assume yes, and we're not sure where, but the Jets, Raiders, we've mentioned it, are probably the leaders in the clubhouse for his services after he comes out of the darkness and his little self-discovery here. So the Packers are on the list. Again, they're just really determining how much they want to move him, what are they willing to accept to move Rodgers, and then how they transition to Jordan Love. So it'll be a very young offense with Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, and really it would be a lot of Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon in the backfield. I think Jordan Love has proved that he has some capacity here to put up some numbers and be a fantasy asset. So something to look at with that transition in Green Bay. It's too good of an offense to ignore the starting quarterback there. And again, there's a good chance it could be Love with Rodgers going out of town. Now we'll look at five teams that are on this list because we are not quite sure exactly who's going to be their starting quarterback. We have a good idea. So we went from no idea to having an option between two to having a pretty clear path to where they should go with these quarterbacks. We'll do that in our final segment. I did tell you at the top about FanDuel Sportsbook being the official sponsor of the Locked On NFL Network here, as well as the NFL. And it's always great to partner with that type of site that's going to give you the best action possible. And right now, NFL season's over, but it's the midway point of the NBA season. It's here. Now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. That's only at FanDuel.com. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and three-pointers. Drained. It's a lot of things you can do. You can build a single game parlay based on a game with the over under the total and the spread. So that's a good way to go. Or the money line and go in that direction. Player props is something I like to do with scores, especially involving the stars and figuring out if they're going to be in this position to produce those points or rebounds or assists, whatever number you're looking at. And a lot of exclusive bets. The 2x3 is an interesting bet for NBA. 2 3-pointers scored in the first 3 minutes. So a lot of fun stuff there that you can check out. A lot of ways to bet. Plus, FanDuel lets you even combine your bets for a chance of bigger payout in the form of that same game parlay. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockdown. That's FanDuel.com/lockdown to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA as well as NFL. So good stuff all around here with FanDuel. We're glad they're part of the network for NFL and NBA. All right, it is time to close the show looking at 5 more teams with uncertain quarterback situations. How about the Baltimore Ravens? Lamar Jackson, we figure with the Todd Monken hiring as offensive coordinator to replace Greg Roman and Jackson having a role in consulting, that he should be back. But things could break apart with the negotiations. He is representing himself here. So again, the Falcons are still on the radar until that deal gets done with the franchise tag and he's not traded through that, then or a long-term deal happens, then we're going to feel confident that Lamar indeed will be a Raven. The Giants are making Saquon Barkley a priority in re-signing, maybe because it's easier to do than Daniel Jones. But Daniel Jones, they got to figure out the right price for him. There's a potential they could let him walk. I doubt they will do that if Brian Dable has a say here with Mike Kafka. They want to continue to build here with Daniel Jones. It's hard to start from scratch again as they've invested some. So I would expect Daniel Jones to be back as a free agent in some form, maybe through the franchise tag as well. So Jackson and Jones should be fine where they are. Now the Commanders are on this list because I'm not totally sure they're buying into Sam Howell, but right now that's what they say. Sam Howell is going to be starting quarterback. Taylor Heineke's a free agent. They can move on from Carson Wentz pretty easily here. So they're going to give Sam Howell a start or shot at least early. They could go after a bridge veteran as well, but I see that to person being on the bench and Howell getting every opportunity to prove himself to know what the Commanders have in him. So again, Sam Howell should be the Commanders' starting quarterback. I'm not all that thrilled about it with Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, some of the receiving talent they have. But hey, we could be wrong, and he could really develop here pretty quickly. So something to look at with Sam Howell. Or the Seahawks, we'll see if they re-sign Geno Smith. They're expected to do so. Geno should remain the starter. He just had the most passing yardage in Seahawks history in a single season. So they liked him. They won with him. They got to the playoffs with him. They're going to do their best to get Geno back as a free agent on a reasonable deal here, knowing that he's a veteran. You don't have to break the bank to get him. All right, and finally, let's look at the situation that we're just trying to figure out the health here. And it's going to be a battle, but either way, the 49ers are set, you feel like, with between Trey Lance coming off the ankle broken, all that, and Brock Purdy with the elbow surgery, going to be out for a while. So Lance or Purdy for the 49ers should be okay, just figuring out who's better for their offensive role. Again, we didn't get to see a lot of Trey Lance. He got hurt in week 2. There was a big rainstorm with bad passing conditions in week 1 against Chicago. So he's a big unknown, but we know he has a great upside because of his running ability and being able to distribute with his big arm. Purdy, however, has shown a pretty high floor with the multiple touchdown consistency with the weapons they have in San Francisco. So a lot of stuff to think about here, but I think Purdy versus Lance, I think if Lance is somewhat fully healthy, they're going to go with him, and they invest a lot in him, trading up to get him 4th overall. I think Purdy can be a fine backup, but teams will have more film on him, and Lance just gives that upside of the athletic, dynamic running ability as well. So again, something to watch, but right now, Lance actually might be ahead of Purdy now because of the way things are going with OTAs and minicamp. That should give him a real good chance to compete and take that job back that he lost because of injury, first to Garoppolo and then to Purdy. So keep in mind that they didn't turn to Purdy as soon as Lance got hurt. They went to Garoppolo, and they were hoping for the best with Purdy, and they got that and then some. So interesting situation, but the 49ers have such a strong system that you feel okay in fantasy football with the skill players either way, and definitely going to consider Lance or Purdy as a quarterback that you can start more than you would have thought with Jimmy Garoppolo in the 49ers offense in fantasy football. So there you have it. There's a breakdown of the 15 teams of the biggest quarterback concerns and questions here for 2023 and breaking down what they might do here with that most important position in the NFL. Thanks so much for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen day. We're free and available to you every day during the week on all platforms most days, unless we're taking a day off or we have a holiday. We took the Monday off for sure after the Super Bowl, but we'll have shows for you all throughout next week as we work towards the NFL Scouting Combine here and the fantasy football perspective there. But breaking it down, looking at a lot of the offseason storylines here, advanced scouting mode on Locked On Fantasy Football. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinny Iyer. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and we'll check you out here on Friday to close the week.